Any luck?
Hi, Jana. We're live now. You can start letting people in.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We'll just be waiting a few minutes until people join, and we'll start in around 5 minutes. Thank you. Feel free to introduce yourself into the chat, your name, and which country you're calling in from until people join us in the meeting. Thank you.
Zero 06. 006.
Thank you for joining in, everybody. We will be starting in a few minutes. Feel free to continue the momentum of introducing yourself into the chat. So nice to see some familiar faces and names in the meeting. Feel free to mention your first and last name and where you're calling in from, and we'll start in a few minutes.
Hi, Jana. Hi, people. So good to join, like after so long. I can see Steven as well. Shannon is here. Yeah, it's so good to be here. Oh, by the way, myself, Karthik Verma from India. I have been working with CYNG team for quite long time, and currently I'm involved with some work on climate change and child participation with UNICEF India. Thank you.
Nice to see you too, Karthik.
Hello, good evening, good afternoon. I'm Sasha Emmanuel James. I'm Executive Director of Youth Action Climatic Change and member of this Children and Youth Project Group to UNIP. I'm from South Sudan. Nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you, Sasa. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi everyone. My name is Hope Miranda Kawalala. I am from Malawi, Lilongwe. I am the founder of EcoCycle Africa, working in waste management and circular economy solutions. I am pleased to meet you all. I am a member of CYMG. Thank you so much. Very pleased to be here.
Thank you so much, Hope. Pleasure to have you. Okay. Let me share my screen for the slides and we can begin. The screen is still loading, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Is it visible?
Now I can see it.
Yes, awesome. Thank you so much, Asya. Nice to see you as well. So hello everybody. Thank you so much for joining us to the first youth roundtable ahead of the first plenary of the Intergovernmental Science Policy Panel on Chemicals, Waste and Pollution, which will be happening in less than a few weeks on the 2nd of February. My name is Janna Rodi. I am the Chemical Waste and Pollution focal point of the Children and Youth Major Group at the UNEP. And it's with great pleasure to be organizing this roundtable with you all today. There's a lot of familiar faces and names of people who have been engaged in the process of seeing the panel come to life. Especially that this panel has been created through an open-ended working group process and has just been brought into acceptance by member states last year in 2025 in Punta del Este in Uruguay. And today's roundtable will be doing a bit of a capacity building session in the beginning to share the process of how this panel came to be, as well as the engagement of the Children and Youth Major Group over the past around 3 years towards the establishment of the panel. And then we will be moving forward towards the expectations and the outcomes of the first plenary. And we'll be having a discussion amongst ourselves through breakout rooms on the main documents that are going to be negotiated in the first plenary session. And again, just some housekeeping. As usual, I think we're all quite familiar with the Zoom housekeeping of to please remain muted until you would like to ask a question or engage in the conversation by raising hand first. And we will be having the breakout sessions with facilitators to guide the discussions. And afterwards, the session will be shared. The recording of the session will be shared. So as mentioned, we will first talk about the Children and Youth Major Group and the engagements towards the establishment of the panel, the work that's been done by the Children and Youth Major Group and its members over the past 3 years on pathways for involving early career researchers in the science policy panels. And there will be a debriefing from the last open-ended working group, or OEG for short, that happened last year, as well as expectations, and then we'll move into the breakout group sessions. So as all of you probably are already familiar and know, given that you hopefully are part of our mailing list, and if not, we can put the link into the chat for you to join our mailing list to stay up to date with the Children and Youth Major Group activities and events. Children and Youth Major Group, or CYMG, is a formal youth engagement mechanism to the United Nations Environment Programme, promoting youth perspectives in the United Nations Environment Assembly and other relevant processes within UNEP. And this includes open-ended working groups, science policy panels that already exist, such as the Global Environment Outlook, as well as UNEP facilitated initiatives and other UNEP administered multilateral environmental agreements, such as the Minamata Convention and the BRS processes. So membership, the Children Youth Major Group represents more than 2,000 youth organizations, 66 of which are accredited to UNEP, and we have more than 12,000 individual members from more than 130 countries, many of which are present with us today in the call as well. So the main activities and the goals of the Children Youth Major Group is to support youth environmental leadership through active policy advocacy, which is something that has been done very actively towards the establishment of the panel. And what we hope is one of the main outcomes of today's discussion as well is expanding youth access to decision-making processes. And the first step to that is building capacity and advocacy towards those pathways. So the Children and Youth Major Group has been consistently engaged in the open-ended working group process since, of course, UNEA, the resolution that has created the open-ended working group process, and followed by OEG 1.2 in Thailand, to OEG 2 in Nairobi, OEG 3.1 in Geneva, and the most recent OEG 3.2 in Punta del Este in Uruguay. And here you can see from the meeting reports of the Secretariat, the interventions that have been consistently made by the Children and Youth Major Group to ensure that young people's perspectives are incorporated and included within the panel's establishment. And this is something that we will share also in the following slides in terms of what young people have co-created as potential pathways. And I would like to greatly thank the efforts of many of the leaders of CYMG who have really helped in this process. Olga Skaradina and Asila Butolov, you can see in the picture here, have really helped to co-create a lot of the consultations and the research in terms of how young people have been engaged in previous science policy panels, where the gaps are, and to constantly create a consultative process with the youth constituency under the Children and Youth Major Group. So just wanted to also briefly share some exciting resolutions that came out of the United Nations Environment Assembly, the 7th session last year in Nairobi in December. One actually, one of the most exciting outcomes is UNEA 7 Resolution 6, which has been a result of very extensive advocacy efforts from the Children and Youth Major Group for very lengthy amounts of time to finally bring this to life. There is the first UNEA resolution for the meaningful participation of youth in environmental processes and on environmental education. And this is quite relevant to the science policy panel, given that it creates precedent for the engagement of young people in a meaningful and an effective way in environmental matters and processes, in which the science policy panel falls under that band. So this is something that was a great success from last year and is a pillar to build on moving forward for the science policy panel. So what have been some of the proposals for meaningful youth engagement within the science policy panel based off of the work the Children and Youth Major Group have been leading in the past couple of years? So based off of consultations and research, there are 5 main outcomes that came out of the process for ways to include young people in the science policy panel. The first being establishing a youth expert advisory group as a subcommittee under the interdisciplinary expert committee. Now, there's many of the foundational elements of the panel are still being negotiated, and we'll get to that point when we talk about the debrief from OEG. But a potential avenue to make sure that the science policy panel is inclusive to young people is to have an expert advisory group consisting of young people to provide input to the panel in a way that is institutionalized. Secondly is a fellowship program. This is something that can help embed early career professionals and scientists in the processes of the science policy panel and also support them in being authors in in the different formats of reports, because the science policy panel has different formats of outputs that are also still being negotiated. But this is something that takes place in other science policy panels, such as IPBES, for example, the Intergovernmental Science Policy Panel on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. Thirdly is a PhD scholarship program. This is something that is actually adopted by the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, that provides opportunities for scholarships for PhD funding for early career researchers to be able to undergo their research topics in their respective countries on topics for the IPCC relevant to climate change. But this could be something that the ISPCWP adopts moving forward to enable young scientists to work on problems relevant to chemicals, waste, and pollution in their context. Fourthly is to have a youth network for stakeholders who are interested and engaged in providing input or being present in the plenary of the ISPCWP. And the more there is more awareness about the panel, the more there might be more youth organizations interested to participate in the science policy panel, in which a network would be quite helpful for information sharing, as well as networking amongst the young scientists and policymakers. Fifth is youth-friendly deliverables and outreach. This is something that the Children and Youth Major Group to UNEP is quite an advocate of is to have deliverables that are tailored for young people. And this is something as well that the Science Policy Panel will hopefully be able to adopt in its approach of crafting its deliverables. And with that, I will pass it over to Stephen to share a debrief of the last open-ended working group 3.2. And Stephen was one of the youth delegates who was present on the ground and can give his experience of the outcomes of the session. But this open-ended working group was the last one, followed by the intergovernmental meeting, which then established the Science Policy Panel. And these are the key documents that Stephen will talk about that will be relevant for our discussion. Thank you. Over to you, Stephen.
Thank you, Jana, for the opening. So, hello everyone. My name is Stephen from Indonesia, and I will give the short debrief on the OEWG 3.2 and intergovernmental meeting outcomes. As you know, that OEWG 3 is the open-ended working group meeting to establish this panel, but unfortunately, they couldn't wrap up in Geneva, so they decided to have a 3.2 in Punta del Este. And the meeting fortunately concluded and produced at least three of the meeting outcomes. So you can see UNEP SPPCWP OEWG3 conference room paper 5, 6, and 7. So conference room CRP5, it is on the draft decision of the intergovernmental meeting to establish the panel. In short, this paper stated that the member states and others decided to establish the ISPCWP, the name, Intergovernmental Science Policy Panel on Chemicals, Waste, and Pollution. And then also in the document, it contains the foundational document. So what is foundational document? It is a document like a set of rules, not rules, a set of principles, a set of organizational things that becomes the foundation of this new panel. Unfortunately, it still has unresolved brackets that will be discussed in the first plenary meeting. Two of the things that are still bracketed are on the scope, objective, and functions. So if you see the link of, so this is all publicly available documents. You can check it in ISPCWP website, or you can just type ISPCWP or flash plenary documents, and then you can access these documents. So two of the unfinished or unresolved brackets are on scope, objective, and functions. It includes what is the goal of the panel, whether it's need to be specified on human health and environment or not. Like, this is a hard contention point during our meeting. And also operating principles. Some of the operating principles are still in bracket. One of it is on geographical regional balance, and then the other was on gender diversity, and it will be discussed hopefully in the first plenary. And then the second document is on recommendations for consideration by the plenary of the, I bracketed it because like the original title is name of the panel. So like I replaced name of the panel with ISPCWP because it's the name of the panel. At its first session, it outlines three things. The first thing is to outline the things to be discussed in the first plenary session. So this is like a sneak peek of what will be the agenda of the first plenary meeting. So they decided on two things. The first one, they recommend the plenary to adopt the rules of procedure draft in the first plenary meeting. Supposedly, these rules of procedure was supposed to be also adopted in the OEWG, like after the OEWG. Unfortunately, no time for that. So like it was postponed to the first plenary meeting. It contains a lot of things, like a lot of chapters, including on the mechanism of decision making, etc. So the main point that will be discussed, I believe that Jana will also talk about what will happen in the first plenary, will be on finishing rules of procedure, and they indicated that hopefully by the first plenary meeting and ISPCWP will have the rules of procedure ready. And then another recommendation is to consider Annex 2 until 4. So it's about determining the work program. So what is a work program? Let's say we come to the IPCC or ICBES, they have the work program. Their work program as an intergovernmental science policy panel is to produce their publication. As you know, for example, in IPCC, they have the assessment report. Like now we are entering the seventh assessment report. So that's what we call about the work program. So like what are the one of them is deliverables, but not only deliverables, because like panel deliverables will be discussed on Annex 3, and then Annex 4 is about conflict of interest policy. Last time it was discussed was way back to 2024 when it was in Geneva at the time on conflict of interest policy. The member states and the negotiators who collaborated for CRP6, they thought that maybe Annex 2 until 4 will not be the priority, but the priority will be on the rules of procedure, but they will still be discussed. So moving on to CRP7 on the decision of intergovernmental meeting on the arrangement for the interim period. I know that this is more or a high level, but it will be important in the future. Like one of it is the idea of the UNEP to provide interim secretariat for the ISPCWP operation. It means that until it is decided otherwise, UNEP will still be the interim secretariat of ISPCWP. It means that its operation, same as IPCC and IFBES, correct me if I'm wrong, will be still under UNEP until decided otherwise. And then second one is invites governments and others in position to provide voluntary financial contributions. So far as I know from my colleagues, there are at least two countries have a proposal to support the ISPCWP, but I will not bring it here because like I forgot whether it's publicly available or not. And then the third one is like basically prepare the first session of the plenary. So those are the three key documents that become the outcome of OWG 3.2 and the IM. So I will give the floor back to Jana. Jana, please.
Thank you very much, Stephen, for the comprehensive overview of the documents that came out of the sessions last year. And as mentioned by Stephen, there's a lot that there is an agreement of establishing the panel, but a lot of the documents that guide how this panel will be organized, who will be a part of the panel, how will decision making take place, is still being negotiated. And so a lot of the documents have a lot of brackets in them, and this is the goal of the first plenary, is to resolve a lot of these brackets in key documents. And Stephen, I think it is publicly available in terms of the two countries that have provided the offers of hosting the secretariat of the panel. There is an offer on the table by Switzerland as well as Kenya. Kenya, hosting the headquarters of UNEP, has placed forward for the panel to remain in UNEP. Whereas Switzerland has also provided a offer in terms of hosting the secretariat of the panel in Geneva, given that there are many multilateral environmental agreements related to chemicals, waste, and pollution that are also present in Geneva and Switzerland. So that is still to be determined in the first plenary. And moving on to the next agenda item of what are the expectations and outcomes, because as Stephen mentioned, there's a lot that's unresolved and a lot of brackets. The main goal out of the first plenary session is on finalizing the rules of procedure document, which remains lots of brackets remain in the rules of procedure document. And this is quite important to be able to make the panel functional in terms of selecting experts, in terms of the composition of the members, and the decision-making body of the panel to become functional, which is called the plenary in this case. And then secondly, the draft conflict of interest policy to also try and finalize that document. However, there is more importance placed on the rules of procedure, as that's what will that is what will make the panel operational. And so these two documents we will incorporate. We have created questions for the discussion and the roundtable in 2 breakout sessions. So these two documents will be present in both breakout sessions as they're quite important for the functioning of the panel moving forward. For the rules of procedure, something that is important and to keep in mind, as mentioned with the pathways of youth engagement and involvement, is specifically for the interdisciplinary expert committee. And here, the idea of how will the experts be selected? Will there be an opportunity for early career professionals to also be selected? How will the notification process take place so that there is accessibility of scientists all over the world to be able to apply and put forward their CVs to be a part of the committee? And something that is also still being negotiated is the ability to create other subsidiary bodies under the panel. So the Interdisciplinary Expert Committee is considered a subsidiary body under the panel. There can be an opportunity to create other subsidiary bodies, and within that, there can also be opportunities for early career inclusion into the panel. For the conflict of interest policy, this is quite important, obviously, given that, first of all, there's still brackets around who the conflict of interest policy will apply to. Will it only be on the Bureau, which will be mainly from, so far, I think it's 2 members from the different geographical regions of the world under UNEP regional offices naming determination, as well as the members of the interdisciplinary expert committees, the experts, and future subsidiary bodies. So there's different options for who the conflict of interest policy will apply to. In theory, it should apply to everyone, but there is still some debate in terms of the extent of the membership and the requirements to submit a conflict of interest declaration form. And secondly, what will be disclosed in the conflict of interest form? Will it be personal affiliations of the governing body members or the experts? Will it be potential conflicts of interest in terms of financial associations? And then thirdly, the implementation of the conflict of interest policy. Will there be a committee who will receive the forms of the conflict of interest policy, who will then filter and rank the experts, for example, who will be participating in the panel? So there's a lot that are still being discussed under this policy. However, it's quite important to ensure that the science and the recommendations that come out of the panel are robust and can be trusted by all members, both policymakers and local communities worldwide. 2 other documents, as mentioned by Stephen, is the draft process for determining the work program. Something that's important here is there's still not finalized whether observers will be able to provide input on the submissions to the panel to work on specific issues. So the work program will either be determined only by member states, countries, to put forward or to suggest different topics that should be covered by the panel in terms of assessments, scoping reviews, reports, and whether observers, so stakeholders, will have any say in the work program. So this is quite important and something that will likely not be finalized in the first plenary, but will open up the discussion, hopefully to be finalized by the second or third session. And then lastly, one of the key documents as well is the panel deliverables. What are how will the panel format the deliverable? Is it going to be in reports? Is it going to be in different methods and formats? And who will be involved in creating the deliverables? So this is quite important. And also having involvement of stakeholders will also be important here to ensure that the knowledge is accessible, and as well as for young people to have the language be understandable for researchers all around the world. So with that being said, those are the key documents that we will be discussing today, and we have tried to make the questions in the breakout rooms as simplified as possible. Our goal is not to go line by line into all of these documents because they're quite lengthy and very technical. The goal is just to gather insights and share perspectives as young people. A lot of us here are early career scientists or professionals, or have used science in some way or have produced evidence. So according to these documents that will be negotiated, that will determine how accessible the panel will be moving forward for young people, it's quite important to gather our views and to share our perspectives. So both breakout rooms will have their facilitators and guiding questions. There will be two common documents discussed in both, the rules of procedure as well as the conflict of interest policy, as these are two very fundamental and key documents. And then depending on your interest, you could go into Group A or Group B. Group A will discuss the work program, so how the topics will be selected. Chemicals, waste, and pollution is very broad in terms of thematic coverage. And so here to just share perspective in terms of how topic selection should be. And for Group B, it will be on the deliverables and outputs of the panel. And so I will give you some time to think of which breakout room you would like to be a part of, and we will create the breakout rooms. And all of the documents as well that have been discussed, Stephen's presentation, as well as the documents for the first plenary, are available online on UNEP's website, and we can also put the links into the chat. And we will also follow up by email after the session to also share these documents in case you would like to read more on them. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen and I will open up the breakout rooms. And we have our two facilitators, Stephen and Samuel, Samuel, I believe, is also in the call, yes. Okay. Okay. The rooms should be open. And so as mentioned, Group A will look at both groups will have the same two documents of the rules of procedure and the conflict of interest policy. And then Group A will have the additional document of the work program, and Group B will be on the deliverables. For Group A, the facilitator is Stephen. And for Group B, it will be Samuel. And the breakout groups are open, so please move into the rooms that you would like to enter. Except Stephen and Samuel, you have already been pre-assigned.
Hello, yes. Thank you, Jana, for dragging me to this chemical business again. I love chemical. I love waste. Yeah, I love pollution. I love everything. So,
Oh gosh. Thank you for joining, Samuel.
I can't join the breakout room, surprisingly.
You
Oh, I
cannot
can. I
join.
can.
You can.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. Yep. So the breakout rooms are open for people to join. So if you scroll down to the main panel below the screen, you can see the four boxes of breakout rooms, and you can choose whether you'd like to join Group A or Group B. Group A, okay, Sasa, I will help to transfer you. Okay, Dr. Ananfak, I will transfer you as well. Group B. For those of you still in the main room, we are switching to breakout rooms. And Group B more on the deliverables. Sasa, are you unable to join?
You can add me again, maybe. I have a network. You can add me so I can join.
Yes, yes, I have tried to add you. I think. Let me see.
Yeah, and we are cut off. But yeah, Rahel, please finish your argument now, Rahel.
Yeah. Sorry. I just wanted to say we need to consider, in fairness, that the chemical industry is extremely powerful and extremely rich, and everyone that is youth is normally very likely to be pro green chemistry, but has no power whatsoever. And there must be a fair playground, also regarding the power in money dynamics there, because of course the chemical industries, they love to put money on problems.
Thank you. Noted it down. Thank you. We'll be happy to present the breakout room summary, Jana,
Yeah.
after this. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Hopefully that was enough time. I tried to go between groups. There was a lot of discussion between the different parts of the document and the different topics that were assigned to the groups. Um, Let me see. Is there anything, do you need a bit more time, like 5 more minutes without help, or are we okay? I think maybe let's debrief, and then if there's any discussions to be had, we can have it in the main room. Just being conscious of time. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. Stephen can go
Okay.
ahead.
Okay, awesome. Maybe we can get a debrief from Group A. Group A, as a reminder, the different topic that they had discussed, aside from the common between both of rules of procedure and conflict of interest, was the work program. So I will hand it over to Stephen if you'd like to share some of the insights that were revealed during the conversation. You could go through the different sections if you like as well.
Yes, thank you. I think I will. Let me see. I think I will share my screen, so everyone can see. By the way, have we shared this document to others, uh, for the note-taking document to give comments or not yet?
We will share the note-taking document afterwards. We'll have a cleaner version afterwards where we'll share it
Yes.
out to for input from the constituency. But for now, you could just share as is. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jana, and thank you for the members of the breaking group. One, so we discussed three documents, two common documents and one special documents. So on the common document, we discussed the rules of procedure. We discussed on interdisciplinary expert committee on the three questions. First, on entry and barriers, the members believe that there is a need for a platform to give input. So like this is like the problem of confusion of like through which platform the voices of early career scientists can be consolidated. I think that's one of the problems that was being highlighted. And then uh, another one is on the gap in the intersection of the policy level and scientific work. So I think this is to early career scientists to see where is the leverage point between the science that they are usually engaged with the policy that they are usually less engaged, except if they are social science, of course. But we are talking about like the scientists who are like more on the STEM background. And then for access and fairness, it's about there were like back and forth discussion throughout the three questions on the dilemma of including people with credentials versus including people with life experience. And the members of the group believe that we should have both, although we haven't discussed on how we can ensure the balance between both credentials and live experience. And then on the conflict of interest policy, this is also a common document. We discussed three questions on the whose conflict of interest matter most. Um, Basically, they say that all of them matters. On the number two, what kind of affiliations could realistically influence someone's judgment? Industry, like yeah, industry, and like there are some suggestions on how to declare that they are like tied to industry, because like as we know that industry sometimes they have like the fund the government, and then the government fund research or government fund someone else. So like there is like an indirect or like level two connection that we are still figuring out how to declare that, because like we haven't had much time to explore the original COI policy document. Sorry, this is COI, yeah, COI. And then on the third, if you were reading a panel report, what would they need to know? Like I initiated the discussion by reflecting, if you are reading the seven assessment report in the future, for example, for IPCC or like any report from IPBES, so like what will you try to see to trust that this is like an unbiased report? Some of the members say who is funding who, it needs to be declared, and then like how conflicts were managed in practice. So like how is the report being uh, written, and then for time. So the unique thing that Group A discussed was on the work program. So on observer input, two questions: what impacts of chemicals, waste, and pollution. Unfortunately, we only have limited time to discuss this. So like there were only limited suggestions. So like for example, chemicals influence development of children's physiology, and then like on the product traceability of restricted chemicals and hazardous substances. So like I think this is more on also the connection to BRS. And then on how can the panel make it easier for you to take part in shaping its work program, Sam answers simplified version with simplified language, component of citizen science, and also like children and youth specific assessment. So I think because of time, that's the summary from uh, Group A. Thank you for all the members who have participated and contributed.
Awesome job. That's great that you went through all the different questions, and there might be a lot more perspectives. So definitely there will be a follow-up by email to ensure that as many inputs, especially for those who weren't able to participate here in the call, to be incorporated in the section. So thank you again, Group A, and thank you, Stephen, for facilitating the conversation and for note-taking. I will pass it on to Samuel for Group B. It would be interesting to see if it was similar discussions on the rules of procedure and on the conflict of interest policy, and then what came out differently for the deliverables section. And yeah, pass it over to you, Samuel.
Thank you. On the rules of procedure particularly, we need to make sure that the meeting venue could be more inclusive. I think that should be stated clearly within the rules of procedure, because the venue location should be also rotated for, to accommodate destination where you can travel easily, because Geneva, for example, is too expensive. And visa issues, of course, across, Europe, we all know it needs Schengen visa. And then aside from that, on the definitions, we have to be paying attention on observer organization definition, where, the wordings of indigenous people and local communities are still there, like side by side, which is not good according to members of the Group B. So therefore, there needs to be only a simple language, a streamlined language that entertain two things according to our breakout room. First is indigenous people, and the second is the early career scientists, for them to be defined as well as part of the definition. And then also, there needs to be a clearer rules on observer participation, where observers can take the floor, when, how, and then if there needs to be a submission of the observer inputs, how it would be handled, how it will be streamlined, how it will be channeled. So yeah, because up until today, I think we have seen in UNIA and across other UN meetings, we submitted a document. It gets reflected in the website. It is uploaded by the secretariat to the website, to the database. But in the, when we try to see the impact of our input document on the working text used for the negotiation, none. So I think that's another issue as well. And on the next question regarding expert, the education should be correct. Explaining, we need to explain that in here, good scientist is a scientist that understand green chemistry and sustainable chemistry, and a scientist that should not cherry pick scientific findings. That's first. Second of all, regarding the inclusion of the early career scientists, we need someone that would understand the chemical waste and pollution, and therefore the role of platforms administered by the UNEP could be strengthened further to support these early career scientists, because when they are participating in the panel operation, in the ISVP operation, they need to be confident. They should not be only knowledgeful. We have a lot of smart people out there, but we are lacking confidence, or we are lacking people who have good or strategic communication skills, you know. So that's another thing that was discussed as well. And on the fellowship, we were discussing this as well as part of the deliverables discussion actually. Regarding the fellowship, the capacity building needs to be further defined. Well, first of all, the capacity building should not let's say should not be too vague, if I catch this correctly from the discussion. And we need to make sure that the capacity building activities can cultivate early career scientists to carry the youth advocacy torch forward. So not just repeating the same or like echo chamber things like that. I think if there was a discussion as well, and then there needs to be the fellowship needs to promote the synergy of knowledge, as well as synergy of MEAs. How could actually MEAs contribute to each other and synergize to tackle chemical waste and pollution, and then leveraging the rich knowledge repository within the operation of the GFC and the BRS as well. And then we need to consider how the chemical industries are extremely powerful, and we cannot deny this is regarding conflict of interest as well. We cannot deny that there are scientists out there who are in the payroll of the corporates. I hate to say this, but yeah, we need, yeah, and then we need to consider how the chemical industries influence the operation of the panel, and they are extremely powerful. So the panel operation needs to be more balanced in terms of its power structure among the members. And youth are likely to be pro to green chemistry. Youth are likely, of course, pro to everything that we advocate for. But again, they have no power against the other experts, that might be backed by the industry. So yeah, I think that's another issue as well regarding conflict of interest. And then the power structure as well. There are scientists who are associated with the chemical corporate industry players, and there are industry players as well there. So need to make sure that the young scientists are able to actually do the work confidently. So the keyword here is confidence building. And the last is regarding deliverables also to add. Regarding the youth-friendly materials, one thing for sure, while we are trying to, of course, we were discussing about some youth-friendly materials, maybe youth summary of the official document of the panel deliverable. But aside from that, I think there needs to be a stronger institutional support. This youth summary, for example, like GWMO, the Global Waste Management Outlook Summary, it was good, but it was the initiative of CYMG, although UNEP supported it, but in the beginning, there is no institutional mechanism by UNEP provided to support the creation of that youth summary. We were working on it independently in CYMG, led by UN ASIL. So I think there needs to be a further institutionalization in the efforts to mainstream these actions of creating youth-friendly materials, and then ensuring that the deliverables are well disseminated across regions, across expertise, across sector, across thematics, across whatever you can word. I think that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Samuel. That's awesome. Great job to Group B as well. And there's a lot of resonating commonalities, especially on the conflict of interest and the influence of industry on scientists in general. And this is something that is very commonly seen even in academic papers, where there's always disclosure of where the financing has come from for research and for projects, which helps the reader to situate themselves in terms of the knowledge production process and where the financing has come from, which a lot of times, unfortunately, guides the direction in which research is being undertaken. And so that's quite important for outcomes of the panel also to be transparent in terms of the funding and the financing of the sources. And it's great that that came out as well. For capacity building, that's a good point. I remember in the previous OEGs, there was an attempt to define the different types of capacity building, and there was just too long a list and a lot of divergence between countries of what would be under capacity building. And so it was just left vague. So any time there is effort to try and define, there is always the tension of what to keep within the different commas and the constant lists under a certain definition, and then as a middle ground, that all gets removed. And so ambition also gets removed with that, unfortunately, to find the common denominator. So that's why there's a lot of vagueness in terms of capacity building at the moment. However, usually the common response is for it to be strengthened with time. And definitely in terms of the outputs of youth summaries, an experience from the Children and Youth Major Group with, as mentioned, the youth summary for the Global Waste Management Outlook, that was self-initiative to create that. And there was a lot of receptivity after, so it's something that is a success story, however, it needs to be institutionalized and not a burden for young people to constantly advocate and implement. However, to have the institution take it up as something that is being produced and being financed as well to support its production. So I think with that, there might have been some questions that were left. However, I wanted to see if there was anything else that people wanted to mention or bring up that they weren't able to in the breakout rooms or are thinking of right now. It could be on the inclusion in the expert committee or conflict of interest policy or on the deliverables of the panel or the work program. The work program and deliverables of the panel, as mentioned, will likely not be finalized in the first plenary. It's just mainly on the how will the panel be functional? How will decision making take place? How will the experts be selected, the bureau members, so that with further plenary sessions, there can start to be outputs from the panel. So is there anything else that people had in mind or would like to share? I think something as well that maybe has not been I see in group A, but the point about what makes it hard for early career scientists to engage in science policy spaces like this panel, because I think with the Global Environment Outlook, for example, or GEO, that's under UNEP, it's for fellows, GEO fellows, it's a voluntary position, for example. It's not one that is paid, or even, I think in general, for the authors and the scientists involved in GEO, it's volunteering. It's not something that is paid for. And so a lot of researchers from low and middle income countries sometimes do not participate because it's additional time and effort that is not compensated for, and so does not become a priority. So then that sometimes makes it difficult for early career researchers to get involved unless there is an aspect of self-motivation and seeing the non-financial aspects of it, such as mentoring and understanding how reports are being written and contributing to the editing. That's something that motivates young scientists to participate. But funding is something as well that usually is a barrier, at least in my experience in talking to other early career researchers to participate in science policy panels. Maybe even language is a lot of times these science policy panels operate in English mainly. However, there is openness from what I've heard and what I've listened to from people who have engaged in the researchers to find research in their own languages. However, the main writing of the document it primarily happens in English. And so that's something that can be a barrier as well. Does anyone else have any points? A comment from earlier Early career scientist, there's no definition. Yes, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's hard to define because early career is can be defined differently in different contexts. I mean, even from sharing the experience that we had in UNEA 7 last year of defining youth and young people, that took a lot of time, and in the end, it was left to countries to define in terms of their own jurisdiction. Um, so again, definition is something that's usually a challenge. However, introducing the concept, I think, is important. And the idea of fellowships, this is what comes in of fellowships that so we can look at the definitions that has been used for fellowships, for example, in IBBAS. That can be something. But just to note, IBBAS, for example, the idea of creating fellowships came much later in the IBBAS process. It was not created in the initial plenary or the first few plenaries. So in terms of strategy and what is the most important terms or approaches that would be important for the rules of procedure document, I think as long as there is enough on observers and stakeholder inclusion and having other subsidiary bodies being created, there's no language on young people or youth. Unfortunately, this is something that um, has been attempted many times in the past few sessions, but there hasn't been a lot of success yet, except for the objectives of the panel to consider the how chemicals, waste, and pollution impact the health of current and future generations. However, as well, intergenerational equity is a common policy advocacy point for COIMG, and that's also been quite difficult to include in the foundational text. So there's still a lot in terms of how to strategize to make sure that the negotiations, although are focused on very general aspects in terms of just operationalizing, is how to also include entry points for early career researchers to be included in the process. Capacity building is actually not just information sharing, but also an event where you can support the function of countries in the panel. Yeah, exactly. Definitely. And this is, again, something that can be drawn on from UNEA 7, Resolution 6, on the inclusion of young people in environmental matters and processes and in education. This is something that member states can champion, starting with the science policy panel of including young experts in their delegations, but also in their nominations to the expert committee. However, again, if it's not institutionalized in the panel, then it will just be left up to countries that are taking initiative to implement this. Thank you very much for joining, and for those of you who have to leave, thank you so much for participation. And there's still a lot more to do and a lot more advocacy that we need to cooperate on. And this is just the first step. And then AJ, adding on to the point, clear timelines are also important so youth can plan around studies at work. Exactly. So having enough time, 100% notifications to be able to contribute to inputs, whether it's to the work program or whether it's to register as a potential expert or to join meetings. That's something that needs to be accessible also for young people, given that a lot of us are still working / studying, especially those who are doing their undergraduate, postgraduate studies. That's important. And then Gerald, in terms of unifying definition, we can tap the national organizations such as the American Chemical Society, Royal Society of Chemistry to determine a working and common definition of these terms. Definitely, Gerald. That's something that can be done in maps as well. Thank you for that input. Any other prime hope I didn't miss anything? Want to know their impact or how to engage? Yeah, yeah. So this is another function of the secretariat, as well as the notification of how the process is taking place, and so open communication. And I believe usually secretariats of science policy panels do that relatively well. So there's a lot of learned experience to build upon that for the science policy panel. But notification is important throughout the process for participation, or even afterwards when a deliverable is created. How will it be distributed for people to gain access to? And so that's something that's quite important as well. Okay, just being conscious of time. If there's no other points, for the next steps, we will be creating a document in which we will be sharing to the mailing list, and also post-meeting we'll be sharing some of the key resources that have been used in today's conversation. And the goal is to have a common advocacy position for young people that will be on the ground, but also online and aren't able to participate. And it's been quite a challenge actually to find funding and resources, as Geneva is quite expensive. And so this is something that also should be taken into consideration moving forward in terms of the future sessions of the panel, is having more resources for young people to participate in these sessions. And so for those on the ground, it's a much greater responsibility to ensure that there's accessibility of participating and staying up to date with what is happening on a day-to-day. So with that, I wanted to thank you all for joining the Youth Roundtable, and there will be, ahead of the session, the first plenary session starts on February 2nd. On February 1st, there will be a stakeholder day in which the goal is to have a youth consultative meeting. And there will be young people on the ground from different networks. And so trying to find an opportunity to cooperate to ensure that the most is being made of time and efficiency, and also to ensure a common youth position. So please stay in touch email-wise to stay up to date with the next steps. And again, thank you for participating. And if you have any questions, please do reach out to us with the CYMG email. And with that, I don't think I see anything else into the chat. I see one. So unfortunately for this, it was most of the applicants that are attending are self-funded. And this has been, again, as mentioned, part of the challenge in terms of financial resources. So thank you again, Martin, for bringing this up. It remains a very large challenge and something that we try to bring up to the Secretariat as much as possible, but it's been incredibly limited for civil society, and not just for young people, but for all of the other groups. It's been limited for the participation. And so we were not able to mobilize that many people. Even many in this call who did want to attend are not able to because of this purpose. And so this is a common frustration amongst us all. And so this is why those going in person, it's a large responsibility to keep open the communication and the updates to ensure those who aren't able to participate can share their thoughts and their opinions and have a say in the process. And with that, apologies for going over time a little bit. We will share the recording of the session afterwards and the resources as mentioned. And thank you again for joining and participating. And hopefully we'll see you guys in the few weeks ahead to coordinate our position for the first plenary session. And with that, we will end the call. Thank you very much.
But also to
Thank you, Jannah.
assist a lot of
Thank you,
events.
Marwan.
We had
Thank you, everyone.
a program of side
Thank
events,
you.
exhibitions, and high-level dialogues on MEAs.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jana.
Thank you, lovers.
Many thanks. Many
Thank
thanks,
you.
Jana.
Thank you,
Thank
Mercy.
you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you for the great word, Jana, Steven, and oh, he left again.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye. Au revoir, au revoir, au revoir.
Au revoir.